Our platform is accessible and inclusive. We showcase top-notch cannabis products, important trends, keen insights, and industry experts. So we have two of those things today. We have an industry expert and a top-notch cannabis product. I just want to say I'm really enjoying the new blends from Perfect. I've mostly been doing the 5-to-1, which is called Relieve. It's amazing, consistent. There's no guesswork around this ratio. But amazingly enough, there's a 25 to 1 THC CBD ratio. And I should say all are blended with a certain special formulation of terpenes. This one, Rest, has linalool, myrcene, and limonene. And the one I'm enjoying, Relieve, has, of course, our favorite at Cannabis Public School, maybe, caryophyllene, linalool, and limonene. I mean, we are just such a fans of caryophyllene here because of Dr. Philip Blair, who comes in to talk to us about all the benefits of caryophyllene at CB2 receptor as a full agonist. So that was a little segue into what we do here. We advocate for increasing acceptance of cannabis therapeutics among conventional healthcare providers to empower individuals to make informed decisions to transform their health. As Michelle was just saying, we know the medical community has not caught up with the science that is out there around cannabis, and certainly we have enough clinical data, and now even if it is cell culture, even if it is animal data, we have enough data to know that cannabis is a very medicinal product, therapeutic product in the least, a wellness product, but also really, as I always say, more medicine than any medicine that I've ever administered in my 18 years of nursing. We embrace the spiritual and recreational value of cannabis, and every month diverse educators share their expertise on one of the most groundbreaking advancements in the recent medical history, and that is the potential reintroduction of cannabis back into the American pharmacopoeia. And what that looks like, we don't know. Hopefully Michael has some insight into that. Whether you're just starting out or looking to level up your knowledge, Cannabis Public School is here to support you on your journey. We've invited Michael Backus here. He's the author of Cannabis Pharmacy and the chief formulator at Perfect Blends. This here is actually a perfect blend. This is all you need to start your cannabis journey, It really is. Somebody click a screenshot for me. Wait, did I do that right? No, I can't do it. Did you do it? Thank you. Okay, love it. Michael was involved in cannabis in the very, very, very early days of legalization. Started one of the first dispensaries, maybe even the first dispensaries. And, surprisingly enough, this dispensary was sort of like therapeutic, medically minded, as well as our our spiritual and recreational needs that we get from cannabis. Michael, tell us about these early days and how that led to what you're doing now. And take as much time as you want. I know we'll be involved.
No worries. I can do it in 6 or 7 months. So I'm Michael Backus. I work in pharmacy. I'm the chief product officer for Perfect Blends, and I make this new line of products called MedCan. My background was that I had a form of migraine that my neurologist said might benefit from using cannabis. Strokes run in my family. My doctor said that conventional migraine medicines might raise the risk of stroke for me. Recommended I tried cannabis, hadn't really used it since college. Went to some of the earliest dispensaries in the Los Angeles area, LAPCG, which was founded by Don Duncan from Berkeley. and started asking questions, and nobody could answer the questions about like, how does this work?
I'm turning up the heat, honey.
And I got more and
Mike's
more,
off, everyone.
I got more and more into it and into the research, and started finding papers by Rafi Meshulam and Ethan Russo and some of the people who were studying cannabis seriously as a medicine, and just got fascinated by it. And ended up starting Cornerstone, which is a dispensary in Eagle Rock. We started it in late 2006, and it's done really well. I left them around 2010 to go off and do cannabis breeding, but Cornerstones continued to thrive, and we use them as almost like a beta site for our products at MedCan. And Cornerstone won the last 2 Emerald Cups for best dispensary in Southern California. And it's well deserved, just because they're really on it, and they really know their products, and they know their products a lot more deeply than a lot of dispensaries do. They take it very, very seriously from a medicinal and chemistry standpoint, and they know what they're talking about when they talk about their products. So yeah, so I got into it early just because I thought that interacting with people and sharing the knowledge that I was starting to dig up and learning from them would create a community that took the plant a little bit more seriously. And it really was great, because we hunted all over California for unusual cultivars, like cannabis plants that were either legacy plants or unusual terp profiles. And when I left Cornerstone, I went off with Dr. Mark Lewis, and we started a lab to examine plants as we bred them. And we ended up screening 18,000 different plants. By the time I left, they'd probably done 30 by now, 30,000, to see what's in them as far as terps and cannabinoids. And even some more unusual compounds, like some of the esters and stuff that are not even really talked about these days, but most likely have at least some small pharmacological impact on how cannabis works. The esters are responsible for a lot of the fruity notes that you note in cannabis these days. And we pay special attention to some of these other compounds when we formulate. We're working with a company in Israel that studies terpenes and other cannabis volatiles and essential oils very, very closely. And they've been helping us identify receptor-specific terpene and ester blends that we can use in our products to try to push the kind of trajectory of the effect in a specific direction. It's like an inertial guidance system in a rocket. It's not really going to steer it widely, but what it's going to do is it's going to steer the outcome enough that the person who's using it will notice. And so what we focus on in our MedCan line is we focus on relief, rest, and euphoria. And those hit pain, mood, and sleep. And those are the big areas of medicinal interest that we noticed when I was working at Cornerstone, and we've noticed with every dispensary we've worked with, that those are the 3 symptoms that people have a tendency to try to find something to help with.
Yeah, that's interesting because, here we have these 3 overall, like seemingly simplistic pain, mood, and sleep, things that people often ask for to relieve their symptoms, the most common, and yet what works for me won't work for you, what won't work for you, what won't work for you in the traditional sort of, offerings that are out there. And I think that's where this sort of consistency and reliability comes in and is very important for, new cannabis users and those who want to switch, maybe switch their use if they've developed maybe now a medical condition and they want to change up their the way they consume, to be a little bit more, therapeutic.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. And I think one of the big things has always been that the range of products available to consumers in California and for the most part, the rest of the United States, they're very, very similar. If you test these products, I worked on rewriting the Emerald Cup rules a couple years ago. And one of the things we did was we added terp classes so that people could see more diverse flower because there was no diversity amongst the flower. Well over 60% of the entries in the Emerald Cup are all the exact same terp profile. And so they all have different names, but they're
right.
all they're basically all the same chemovar. They're all the same plant. And so these caryophyllene, limonene, linalool combinations are basically balkanizing the market right now. And so what I always encourage customers to do is vote with their dollars for things that are different, because that's the only way they're going to get cultivated. The reason that we made these blends were that the blends themselves were unusual. There were things that you couldn't find typically in a single flower, especially because we were digging down into the level of esters and alkanes and aldehydes and thiols and some of the chemical compounds produced by the cannabis plant that people couldn't even test for typically. And so we think that diversity is a really, really good thing. And we find that we get, gentle, broad spectrum and broad swath effects by working with blends that have this diversity of compounds in them.
I agree, and I really hope that there's some way we can switch up this. We started with the indica sativa hybrid model, which is, has the only validity really that it has is that, that hybrids might have a certain terp file, indicas might have a certain terp profile, but strain names don't really mean anything because of how I've lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
But it's true. The thing is,
Yeah.
is the strain names don't tell the consumer. If you walked into a pharmacy, and I've told the story many times, if you walk into a pharmacy and the pharmacist said, well, this could be aspirin, this could be Valium, here, you buy it. That's what it's kind of like when you kind of
Right.
guess the outcome from the name of the product.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's literally, it's like it's trying to guess the taste of a soft drink by its name.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, okay, and what is the flavor of Dr. Pepper exactly? People are still arguing over that. And so, yeah, I really am a big believer in diversity and listening to our customers and see how they respond. For example, we're currently tuning up our rest product because we got some feedback that says, I liked what you did with the previous rest product in your perfect line more than I like your latest formulation with the receptor-based terps. And so we immediately switched it up. And the reason is that what we found is that a small percentage of people, and this is where the variation within the population is really important, they don't find the rest product as restful as our previous one. So we just switched up and went right back.
Excellent. June, do you want to help us out with the chat and the questions? You ready? You up, girl? You ready for this?
Yeah, most of the questions, one was answered earlier, so I think we're good right now. It's just mostly a little bit of discussion between everybody. Hang on one second, and Michael may want to know this one. I think someone had asked you, because you were talking about, sorry, it lost this place too.
No problem.
And Kelly, help me with this name, furanone? Is that correct?
I say like furanone, but
Yeah,
yeah,
but we were
yeah,
asking, and I think we determined they are a subgroup of esters. Is that right? That was just
yeah.
the question when we were talking a little bit about, someone had mentioned that when you were talking about, effects.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
they're a class called something like butyladenine. It's an unusual class. The uh typically it suppresses appetite. Um, but the big thing about esters in cannabis is they're very, very, very delicate. And we notice this in varieties of cannabis that have like apple smells. Um, those smells don't last. And the reason they don't last is they're off gassing off the plant relatively quickly. A lot of these esters are super, super delicate. So if you're going to get blends or flowers that have ester content, you really have to take care of them. A couple ways to do that. One is to control the temperature around them. Another thing you can do is control humidity. Humidity reduces how fast the volatiles will evaporate through the trichome head, which actually has pores in it. And so that's why cannabis smells so good, is that these compounds are coming through the trichome heads. And that's intensified when those trichome heads are burst because they're really, really delicate. They're little waxy pillows filled with oil, and they're really easy to burst. And the plant basically made them easy to burst so they could either attract or repel animals. These compounds, for the most part, were evolved to kind of interfere with feeding behaviors and also attract insects, but also repel insects. What they basically were designed to do were to control insect nervous systems.
Mhm. Yeah, I find
And
that very fascinating. Yeah.
so how many different types of cannabinoids are we testing for? I think we're testing for like 9 right now. There are a lot of breakdown products of cannabinoids that you hear about, especially in markets where people are trying to sell synthetic or semi-synthetic cannabinoids to people to try to get around local laws. And we don't really pay attention to those because we're not really dealing with them because they're not produced by the plants that we work with. The lab we use is SC Labs out of Santa Cruz, and I worked with them for a really, really long time. I really trust their chemistry. I don't trust their chemistry that much because I'll constantly test them by subjecting them to ring tests where we send them a sample that has a known amount of compound in it and see how close they get to it. And the answer is they get close. So that's why we continue to test with them. While I'm friends with the folks at SC Labs, I'm only friends as long as their chemistry remains really good. And there are only a few, truthfully, there are only a few really good labs in California. The 2 that I found that I really like a lot are Infinite Cal in San Diego and SC Labs, Santa Cruz Labs.
Excellent. JP, do you want to ask your question or shall I? You sent one in.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to. So Michael and everybody, I've developed this method of making rosin without parchment paper and without nylon. And I want to release it in the next half a year. I'm talking to some people, but I get the CBD farms in Oregon, they send me kief for free, and I'm very grateful for. And it's for 3 years old, a CBD master mix. And so I would be pressing this stuff, and it's like pen, like black ink, it's so like oxidized. There's a lot going on in there. And I try it, people have it, and they're getting lit, and this is high CBD supposed material. And I know that when you super concentrate, you're also super concentrating those lower cannabinoid levels of everything. So I imagine that's playing in. But I wanted to know, Michael, what's your take? I've heard about the CBDQ, the quinones, the breakdown tree from CBDA to CBD. What do you know comes after that? Because it can't just stop there. right?
Well, it's really difficult to predict. I mean, you know, the thing is, are you pressing, you're pressing with heat, right?
Yeah, of course, yes.
Yeah, so you could, I mean, you could theoretically be cycling some of your cannabinoid content into something else, but knowing what that something else is can be a little tricky.
Yeah, of
The
course.
thing is that over the last, oh man, I'd say over the last 8 years, I've had experiences with, in quotes, pure CBD cultivars that were surprisingly psychoactive. And
Right.
so has my group. We've all run into it. It's like, yeah, I took CBD this morning and it's noon and I'm lit. And we've never really been able to get to the bottom of it. I've sent samples to labs, I've had them look for things, but you know, the problem is they can only find what they're looking for.
Mm,
These folks are not using instruments to discover chemicals. What they're doing is they're testing for things that they have standards for. Okay, so you have to understand the basics of testing in the cannabis industry is they get a sample of a pure compound and they use the spike produced by that compound to identify spikes in the sample they're testing. All right, so it's not like they shoot it into an instrument and they go, oh, Dr. Bacchus, we found this. And that never happens. I mean, I've had it happen when I've gone for very specialized testing, but the couple labs that had those instruments that can find things that you don't have standards for, they're out of business. So their testing was just too expensive for average folks. And even though I loved working with them because I could send them a sample of something and they just send me back a list, they couldn't quantify anything, but they could tell me what was there. They were using a time of flight system to actually see how long it took a particular molecule to traverse a space, and then that stopwatch result would tell them what the molecule was. And
Wow.
but those guys aren't around anymore. And so these days, when we're trying to figure out unknown compounds in cannabis, we basically have to look to either industry if they're interested, but primarily academia. And most of that type research is being done in Italy, England, and not very much in the United States.
There's
Thank
a
you.
little bit of a follow-up to that question. Some people have suggested that the narcotic effect that he's experiencing may be coming from CBN, maybe through that cycling effect that you were talking about, appearing.
The thing about CBN,
Yeah.
CBN is a little bit overhyped. It's a little
Yeah.
bit weak sauce in
Yeah.
that it's not particularly potent. It doesn't have a lot of binding effect at receptors.
Yeah,
It's
partial agonist.
yeah, and it's normally considered, I mean, the back of the napkin calculation is about a quarter of the potency of THC. We've been hearing
Yeah.
that for years, but not a lot of people have studied it. And
Right.
so the thing about it is that a lot of cannabis science has been kind of hindered by the fact that somebody did research in 1945 on dogs or something, and they say, oh, that's how it works. That's how it works, and then it never really gets challenged
Right.
because studying these things takes a lot of time and effort. A lot of our understanding of cannabis compounds is in dire need of a revision.
And money. Yep.
And money.
Karen is saying and money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
I was just gonna say, there's another question in here from Dr. T that kind of goes along with some of the things you're talking about with testing. And he wanted to know, what are your thoughts on the California DCC removing THCVA and CBGA in the compliance testing? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, it's yeah. Gee, when the state looks lazy, just try to pretend to be surprised by it. Yeah, what they're doing is they're taking a few steps back because they're not confident in the standardization of the methods that are being used. I mean, here's the problem, that everybody was chasing THC potency, and a lot of the labs started to lie to tell people that their flower was more potent than in fact it was. And it got so bad, and independent scientists sent tests to these labs to see how accurate they were. And the answer was they weren't. They were inflating the results. So the state finally reacted, in this case, overreacted by saying, you're going to use our method.
Mm.
And that's the only method you're going to use. And you can't even test until you can prove to us that you can do our method. However, they left out a bunch of stuff, including CBG and THCVA and things that are really potentially of interest. Like, for example, I think CBDV is really interesting, and CBDVA is potentially interesting, though there seem to be some issues with the pharmacology of these cannabinoid acids. There was a huge rush of interest in these when people were juicing cannabis about, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 years ago.
Dr.
And-
Courtney?
Yep, Bill Courtney. And the thing is that it hasn't really been supported by all the research since then. Some people have said, no, this stuff doesn't do anything at all. My belief is it probably does do something, but it probably does something relatively weakly. So to answer Dr. Talleyrand's question, the thing is that this California testing thing, and testing nationwide basically, is a work in progress. And it really took a step backwards this year. I mean, I think it's a step forward to make the labs test honestly and accurately and precisely. But at the same time, we have to know what's in these products. And if you can't test for them, you're never going to learn.
Yeah, I
Right.
actually have a follow-up to that question, because we're very concerned about that here in our little circle, Bram, Dr. T, and I, and all this, well, it's not, we have a grower out of Willits, and he's growing that Pink Boost Goddess. That's doing quite well, has a great following, really selling out here in San Francisco. People, he has special breeding tactics from his mother that he learned from, he's a second generation grower. And he has allowed other people to grow his product too, handpicked, has other cultivators growing it. But he has standards, and it is very consistent, and people are enjoying it, like I said, and it's selling out. But if it's because of the THCV that people are particularly buying it, and if there's no if there's no indication that this has THCV in it, then it's a problem for him and his marketing. And one thing cannabis doesn't need is more problems with marketing.
Well, but also it doesn't need more problems with what's in the box.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is that yeah, I mean, I'm all for the state getting super harsh with labs, especially, I mean, honestly, anybody who inflates their results intentionally should have their license yanked and not get it back. I mean, that's not their purpose.
Do you think money was changing hands?
Absolutely no, money wasn't changing hands. Labs were being shopped for who gave the results that they wanted. And so, yeah, and I mean, honestly, anytime you see a flower marked 40%, it's a lie. It just doesn't happen. I mean, it might happen once out of every 20, 30,000 times, but it is rare. And if you think about it, if you look at a dried cannabis inflorescence flower, 40% of it by dry weight is one compound. I don't think so. I just it beggars belief. So,
And then if there's not another question, where do we go from here with this? And then I'll let June take over the Q&A. But where do we go from here with this sort of, we've bred one hybrid that has high THC in America. Like, how do we go back and fix this.
Well, I mean, the thing about it is that, you know, if you go on the boards and you hear people who are out in Pakistan, Kevin Chaudhry just recently took that trip to Pakistan where he
Yeah.
looked at
Looked
a bunch of
amazing.
cultivars up and down these valleys all across Pakistan, and not kind of a risky place to go for an American. The thing about it is that there is still some diversity out there. Unfortunately, a lot of these large growing regions were Dutchified, meaning they bought seeds from the Dutch seed banks that were highly introgressed and all the same thing. And they replaced their landrace with these high yield, high THC seeds from Holland. But there's still diversity out there, and we need more of it. I mean,
Yeah.
you have farms. You have
Let me
farms.
just,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry, but that's where we have to vote with our dollars, like you were saying.
Sure.
Like, this is where we have to create, it's up to us to create this market.
Well, here's the problem. You can only really vote with your dollars if you can smell, taste, smoke the product.
Right.
And if the product is labeled with enough detail beyond cannabinoids, so you can start to see where the differences are. I mean, most flour isn't even labeled for terp content. And things like esters are so far out of the minds of most cultivators, even though if you talk to them, they recognize that content because they can smell it, but they don't test for it. And there are no labs that are testing for it actively right now. But what we need to do is we need to increase diversity. So if you go to something like Hollow Flowers, if you go to something like the Emerald Cup, look for stuff that's different. Talk to people. Hey, have you seen anything that's really different? And then confirm for yourself. And that'll start to encourage things that are a little different. I mean, the pink Buscatus is a great example. I mean, it's a high THCV cultivar. Those are not, they're kind of scarce in the marketplace. They're not very scarce. I mean, my former partners at Molecular Farms have been breeding them for years, and they have high CBDV cultivars. They have a lot of really weird stuff. But more importantly, they have these essential oil profiles that you just don't see in the marketplace, like high myrcene strains. Try to find a high myrcene strain these days. They are really, really scarce. And earlier this year, when we were doing some of the test blends of Medcan, we were using an ultra high myrcene variety to formulate our relief product because we really, really liked its effect. But it's a really delicate plant, and you got to treat it really nice, or you start to see the terpene content go all over the place, crop to crop.
Interesting. June, what you got? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. There was one question, I think this sort of helps segues into what you're talking about with like testing and what people are wanting and looking for. And Michael, do you have an opinion on the Delta 9 hemp THC beverages? Do you think they're safe? Have you?
Are you talking about
What you're
the Delta 8 beverages or the Delta 9 hemp?
No, the Delta 9, the hemp-based Delta 9 THC
Well,
beverages.
I mean, look, a molecule is a molecule. That it doesn't really talk about how things were extracted or things that were done to the extractions to get the content they wanted, and some of those things can be super, super dicey. And I just think we need some kind of oversight over these things, because I've been to some of these factories and I kind of walked in and tried to get out as quickly as I could. It's like, is that benzene over there, kind of thing? And yeah, I mean, there are people who use solvents and processes that you shouldn't use for anything that's being consumed by people. So I have a tendency to stay away from the hemp-derived Delta 9 as a rule. What I think the problem is that as long as the laws remain oppressive around cannabis, people are going to try to drive around them in ways that aren't safe for human consumption. That's just the bottom line. And
Excellent point.
And people can say, oh, ours is clean, but what we can't say is everybody's clean. And sooner or later, somebody has a problem. Sooner or later, You know, somebody uses vitamin E in a vape pen and people are coughing up blood. And I think that that's what we have to avoid. And the only way to avoid this is transparency and purity and, you know, just the things that make sense. It's just common sense. But when people go out and really are just trying to make a buck and are trying to get cheap biomass, extract it and turn it into money, you can see people take shortcuts where people will get hurt.
Right. I think the money plays a factor in cannabis that it doesn't necessarily need to. I mean, I think it drives and leads things that are, like you said, misinformed and not made correctly. And let's take the cheap way because we have to make profit, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be a business, okay? And I mean, we're going to have to either embrace it or we're not going to have a business. But I think an ethical business would be a really, really nice thing. And the truth is I've worked with some incredibly ethical people over the years, and some not so much. I mean,
Right.
you know, there are a lot of dispensaries in California right now that don't pay for product. They'll take your product. Oh yeah. You know, you spend months trying to get in the door, and then when you try to collect for the product that you dropped off, good luck. And what's great is Cannabis, one of the big cannabis dispensaries in California, now has a credit list. You can check any dispensary to see if they pay their bills, which is
good.
which is really nice.
Nice.
Then you don't have to drop off product with people who may never pay you.
That's
Excellent.
good. Another question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead. No.
Someone else would like to know what type of products does MedCan offer, and I'm assuming they're only available in California.
Currently, but right now we're checking out the East Coast, so we'll probably be there shortly.
Oh, nice.
But so we have a product that focuses on distraction from pain. That's our relief product. We have a product that focuses on mood. That's our Euphoria product. And we have a product that focuses on relaxation and healthy sleep. And that's our rest product. And that's what we've kind of targeted right now. We're gonna have some more.
Wonderful.
I just have to say, when you open these things up, I mean, it's just such a wonder of, you know.
The nose, what I've always said, the nose knows.
I'll never get tired of smelling terps. We did it all day yesterday. We even tasted a few. If you go to a terpene testing, please be very careful. Just like a second of a whiff across your nose. Like, don't.
Actually, you should do it like they do perfume. So the thing
Okay.
is, don't stick your nose in the jar.
Okay.
Right? What you do is you basically are off-gassing molecules into the headspace above the jar, and then you're inhaling them. So you don't need a lot. Also, you'll blow out your nose really fast.
Yeah.
Your nose can get overwhelmed by these terps really quickly. When they don't start to smell as good, it means you've gotten too close. And I mean, I've worked with them for a while, and I really am a big fan of excellent ventilation when I'm working with terps, because when I first started blending with terps, the thing that we found was we were getting very, very high from them. And, yeah, kind of terp silly, we called it.
Yeah, we got terp silly yesterday. It was fun, you know.
But the thing is, from a health standpoint,
Right.
you just have to, less is more.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is that we cannot risk getting on the same ship that we got on with
I agree.
THC
Yeah.
and say, oh, more is better.
Well, let's bump up the
It's got to
terp.
be 5% terps. And the reason is that's going to cause upper airway irritation and potentially worse over time. And the thing is that I know a lot of dabbers who no longer dab because they were dabbing these ultra high terp rosins, and they do damage to the lungs.
Yeah. I don't have the actual quote right here. Oh, yeah. Okay. So let's, it might seem that low concentrations of terpenes, often much lower than 1%, might give an impression of irrelevance. But like cannabinoids, terpenes appear to be effective if their concentrations are at least 0.05%. They have been shown to increase or decrease activity levels in rodents, even when measurable biomarkers in the blood are low or negligible.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, the thing is that they're very, very, very strong compounds. That's why plants evolve them.
Yeah.
And the thing is, a little goes a long way. And as I said, your nose knows. If you can smell it, if you can detect it with your nose, chances are there's a significant amount of it there. Now, we made this mistake with cannabinoids, and we're making it with terpenes now. They're not all created equal. Not all terpenes are pharmacologically active in humans, or at least psychoactively active. They may have other effects throughout the body that'll take us a long time to figure out.
Yeah.
And so, but for now, a light touch with them is a really good idea. As I said, you want it to kind of modify the effect of the cannabinoid you're using, rather than just move the dial over hard.
Yeah, someone had mentioned a talk you had with Frenchie Cannoli
Uh-huh.
about how
Listen,
inhaling the terpenes is bioavailable compared to ingesting them.
yeah. Well, the thing about it is, human beings and animals developed ways to protect themselves from terpenes because plants can't move. So they evolved chemicals that could affect the nervous systems of things that can move, like animals. Animals
Let me
fought
just
back.
add that these are complex and targeted biochemical signals that the
Correct.
terpenes
They're
are sending.
evolved. They're evolved.
Yeah.
And so they tried it until they got it right. And the
Yeah.
thing is
Nice.
that as far as oral use of terpenes goes, your body's got a lot of ways to break things down and metabolize them before they get to your brain. The blood-brain barrier, we've all heard of it. Your liver, a filter organ, really good at breaking compounds down. So a lot of these things, when you take, like, if somebody says, oh, I've got a sativa edible, look at them with a little suspicion, because the truth is that that sativa edible effect typically is indistinguishable from THC alone.
Yeah. We have very complex olfactory sensory receptors in our nose, and this is, and it's a straight shot to the brain. There's no going through the blood. It's the only sense that has a direct transit route to the brain. So again, just more information about the nose, but that the bioavailability and the receptor target activation is actually happening, like, as you smell.
Right. I mean, one of the things that we learned with the MedCan products, and it's really important, and this is how to use the MedCan products, is sip, don't rip when you're inhaling. And the reason is sip, don't rip. And the reason is that you don't want a yellow, white, or white cherry on anything you're combusting and inhaling. And the reason is the higher the heat levels, as Bob Strong at Portland State discovered, you create breakdown combustion chemicals that you don't want to inhale, like polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, all kinds of nasty stuff. And some of these are highly carcinogenic. And so the way that you can avoid that is either by flower vaping, which is really an excellent technique, or sipping, not ripping, where you keep the cherry at the lowest temperature you can to get a hit. And that works just fine. And what's great is it's much, much easier on your throat and lungs. You see these people who try to hit something like their, it's their dying breath. And they're only hurting themselves over time. They're only going to develop chronic bronchitis. They're only going to develop irritated upper airway. And they can avoid that just by going lower and slower with their dose.
Excellent. What you got, June?
So high priority says, and the terpenes are highly lipophilic. Whoops, sorry, hang on. Something else popped in. Highly lipophilic. Any news on water soluble terps?
Yeah, they're around. I mean, they have to be modified to do it. I've got a bottle of them here somewhere. Yeah, you can make almost anything water soluble. The question is do you want to? I mean, the thing about it is that when we play around with these new methods of getting things into us, they may come with side effects. And you may get accumulation. Like, for example, you make something water soluble. You usually do that by attaching one molecule to another molecule. And then you're hoping that those break when they get inside you, delivering the tert molecule. Well, what happens to the capsule? What happens to, what is that? Is that stored in fat? Is that broken down in the body? Does it make something that you don't want hanging around your body? Do they accumulate? I mean, these are real serious questions that people are not asking. And what it is they find a new novel way to get something into themselves, but they don't look at the potential downside of it. I'm not a kumbaya, rah for everything has to be organic and natural and harvested under the moon phase. I'm not that person. What I am is somebody who's skeptical of claims about the efficacy when something is said to work faster, work better. I'm concerned about that because I'm asking, how are they doing it?
Agreed, excellent point. And that's why I just go to the stuff that has thousands of years worth of data. Vegetables are good for you. Getting outside is good for you. I mean, that's my medicine, and that's the medical model I'd love to create. In America.
Yeah, and I like really simple, pristine extractions. I like really pristine flour. I like to use things at the lowest temperature at which they're going to work. Those approaches are they just seem to be healthy. So
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of people are referring to your book. Hello, we all have it. But you had mentioned last time you were, excuse me, on Cannabis Public School that you were doing an updated version. Did that come
I'm
out?
still working on it. It'll be here. Don't ask me when. It'll be here. I was hoping to be here this year, but it's definitely going to be next year. So
okay, just since a lot of people have mentioned your book, I know
I mean, the problem is the revision process for this next edition is, you don't realize how many things you got wrong until you comb through what you've written. And there are just a lot of things that I want to improve, clarify. There's been new research. There's probably been 5,000 papers published since the 2017 edition. And
right.
I also have an enormous amount of stuff to comb through. I'm totally redoing the strain section to make it more about the terp class of the flowers rather than the strain names, because the strain names just go out of fashion too quickly. You can't find these strains anymore. So.
Right.
June, before you read Mel's question, let me just interject something here. Melanie Terborg is our next speaker, February 25th. She's going to talk to us about the insights into the mystery of the endocannabinoid system. Melanie Terborg is the COO and cell biologist with an MA in Women's Studies, a certificate in sustainability management. Mel has a lot of things she's doing, but she is mostly an experienced lab technician in drug delivery, stem cells, genetic engineering, and has a startup experience in small business, biotech, and e-commerce. And she is leading the operations at Emma. So go ahead, June, and ask Mel's question.
Okay.
I read the question here, which is about making a CBD and CBG suppository product using isolates. And isolates are great, especially if they're ultra high purity isolates. And that's the thing you've got to ensure. The thing is just because something's isolated doesn't mean it's alone. And so, you have to make sure, obviously, and I would imagine you do, that, there are no residues of anything in the isolation process remaining in your products, especially given that they're going to be suppository products, because they get delivered to a place that doesn't have a lot of defense. And so the whole point is to just make sure everything is as pure as it can possibly be. The advantage is that you get fantastic absorption, and you should see considerable efficacy. But I'd also be really conservative with your dosing. That would be my advice if I was formulating it.
Excellent.
Any other questions?
I believe that is it for the moment. Let me scan back up.
I can't do the chat and do the speaking part at the same time. It's just really hard, but I think
Yeah, well, I've been trying to keep up as I go down the road.
appreciate you, June.
Hold on, there's something else just popped in. Let's see. Oh, no, that's not a question. We're good.
And by the way, the one thing, just a follow-up to Michelle's question, she was talking about one of the reasons she went the direction of suppositories was that she was working with kids and they weren't responding to the kind of oral formulations they had access to. That's the tricky part about oral cannabis is very, very inconsistent uptake and oral metabolism. It's really a problem, but it's a problem with any drug you take orally. You know, pharmacologists and pharmacists have been working these kind of challenges for years. One of the reasons that, you know, people go, why are you doing a smoked medical product? That seems to be like not right. And it actually is okay. And the reason it's okay is we don't want you to smoke a lot. We want you to smoke a little, a very little. We want you to just relieve your symptoms. We don't want you to abuse our product. And so, but the advantage to a smoke product is how fast it gets into your bloodstream. And
Right.
outside of an injection, which I don't recommend doing with any lipophilic compound, it really is incredibly effective. And so what we find is very, very small dose provides symptomatic relief to a lot of people. And so that's what we're aiming for. And that's why we did what we did.
When do you think the market's going to catch up?
Well, I don't know. I mean, right now the market is it's jammed up a little bit because there's not enough education to the consumer to make more informed decisions. So for a long time, they were just buying based on how strong things were, like what the THC content was. And we got to get past that one. And I think we're starting to get there now. You know, if you went into a dispensary a year ago, all they wanted was 40% pre-rolls. And today they've backed off. Oh no, we need something that's for everybody. We need something for older patients. We need people who are sick and are looking for symptomatic relief. And so we've kind of adjusted our formulations for where the market should be rather than where it is today.
Yeah.
And we're hoping we're right because if we're not. We're
Yeah.
not. But,
Well, I'm hoping you're right too. I just, will say, what I'm doing at the San Francisco VA, I feel is very important is I'm talking to physicians. I just did a webinar for 60 physicians, teaching them this wording, the wording that we've been discussing today, having these type of conversations about cannabis so we can make this informed consumer. And help. And I always say, people who can't take NSAIDs is a low-hanging fruit for a medicinal patient because cannabis is the best anti-inflammatory known to man. And so, once cannabis is legal, I have seen that Harvard Health will indicate that this will be an indication for cannabis. Those who can't take NSAIDs. And this is a large population of people, and NSAIDs are not innocuous,
hardly innocuous, yeah.
Yeah, and Bonnie Goldstein has an amazing webinar on that. You can find it on YouTube. It's from MedCan. It's just a wonderful webinar talking about NSAIDs and how cannabis can be the replacement for it. And by the way, Bonnie Goldstein is coming to Cannabis Public School on March 24th. So yeah, we are just ecstatic.
She's great. She's really she's a superior human being. I love her.
I could almost cry. I lost my train of thought, but not the cannabis that is out in the dispensaries. This is not the cannabis per se that this class of cannabis users coming up will be using. They're not going to be using the high THC blend. They're going to be using something that is a little more thoughtfully prepared. And it is up to us to help these people to the right product, and and the minor cannabinoids, and so that they, so that we can help people who have bleeding ulcers, H. pylori, IBD, gastritis.
Absolutely, without question. And the other thing too is that, I mean, one of the reasons that we do the Medcan products is, number one, we want something that we find these broader spectrum products are really, really effective for a lot of people. And what's an interesting thing is the broader spectrum products seem to have reduced side effect profiles.
Yeah.
And that's been one of the selling points of herbal medicine forever, which is the broad spectrum nature of these natural products make them gentler on the body. And I have a tendency to buy into it. In my own experience and the experience of people who've used our products, is the broader the spectrum, the bigger the parachute. It's a lot easier on the patient.
Yeah. I think we should stop here. It's been an hour. I don't want to hijack Michael. But you can ask Michael anything on Instagram, his QR code, and he'll answer it online, or however he's answering the questions. If you didn't get to ask your question today, Michael, thank you. We're very grateful. Very grateful.
It was a pleasure joining you. Yes, and definitely ask me questions. If you have any remaining questions, just send them to me on Instagram, and I'll get you an answer.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
Thank
Really
you so
nice
much.
nice to see all of you today, and hope you have a
Thanks.
great weekend.
Thank you.
Have a great Sunday, everyone.
Terrific.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Great webinar.
Thank you so much. So nice to see everyone. Really appreciate y'all.
Great discussion.
Yeah, good having you. Come back.
Yeah,
See
thank
you
you for
soon.
organizing that, Mo. That was great.
Oh, you're welcome, Melanie. We're really looking forward to talking to you. Shoot
Yeah.
me an email, JP, if you wanna chat any further.
Me, I always want to chat. We got a lot going on. I'm in New York City, and the people out here are confused above all. They're what I'm doing right now. I don't know if you have a sec. I'm taking all these Mylar bags
Yeah.
off the street because they're all over the street, and I'm turning them into bags.
Oh, wow.
They're all over the street, and Mylar is pure poison.
Amazing. What a good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Neat.
super special.
I'm making belts out of the Mylar,
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
but it's all poison. Mylar was patented by DuPont, which is the war machine. So,
Yeah.
this is where we're at. And now the kids, these young city kids, they're with their vulnerable minds, they're walking around smoking their weed out of Mylar, throwing it on the ground. This is the end of the world,
Oh, we need to talk about this. Yeah, definitely come back. Well,
Sure.
yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Let's talk. What
Yeah.
are you on Instagram?
Smith Med.
Okay,
SMYTH.
I'll send you a message.
Appreciate you.
Bye.
Hi, Elizabeth. Yo, Elizabeth, you still here? Let me thank you.